New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you here today. I'm Reverend Dr. Victoria Bomberry, and I am coming to you from Riverside, California, which is in Southern California. And I'm delighted to be here this morning for this discussion of perfection. And this is the second week of it, right? Because we had the first week last week, and we're going deeper into the idea of perfection. And, I think this could be one of the more difficult things for some people to grasp. And it is kind of a difficult concept when we think about perfection, and we can look around the world and it looks like, oh my goodness, what are we talking about here? There's a lot of problems and issues in the world. And, I have my own problems and issues personally. So we can lose sight of the perfection of creation. We go into the minutiae and we get lost in the effects of our lives, and we forget the design and the laws of the universe that are operative, that are that perfection that holds everything together. So this is what we're talking about today, and I thought that it would be illuminating just to think about this in terms of what we our own personal beliefs, and how those beliefs are shaped by different worldviews in that are operative in us even today. And if we look at Ernest Holmes overall, of course, Ernest Holmes was bringing together philosophy throughout the ages, the wisdom of the ages, together. And he was having a dialogue with all these different thoughts that had been presented. First, in the Western world is where he was very located, in the Western world. So we've got a lot of Western thought that is in the Science of Mind textbook. And then later he started exploring Eastern thought. So we see that kind of as a trajectory for a lot of theologians in the 20th century. They were very located in Western thought, and then they went outward from there and went east, and brought these things together in a way that we could really talk about our different beliefs and what shapes us as a human species, as humanity. What are our thoughts? What is going into that thing that we would call the collective unconscious in Carl Jung's terms, or in race thought, right? In Ernest Holmes' iteration of that. So I wanted to start with with these worldviews, just so that we get an idea of how things have been passed down to us, and what we're kind of swimming in, right? Whether we know it or not, this is what we're swimming in. And the ancient worldview, and I'm taking this from an author called Winks, who was a theologian, and he describes the ancient worldview as the view reflected in the Bible. And in this conception, everything earthly has its heavenly counterpart. So, we know that that's operative now, right? We still hear that. We still think about that in some ways. And he says, in that conception, everything heavenly has its earthly counterpart. So they're just like almost mirror images of one another. And then every event in this worldview is a combination of both dimensions of reality. If war begins on earth, then there must be at the same time war in heaven between the angels of the nations and the heavenly council. And then events that are initiated in heaven are mirrored on earth. And this is a symbolic way of saying that every material reality has a spiritual dimension. So that's kind of the truth in there, right? Every material reality has a spiritual dimension. And every spiritual reality has physical consequences. And these things are taking place simultaneously in the visible and invisible realm. So that is the ancient worldview. So we see that that there are things that are going on in heaven in that worldview that are being enacted on earth too, as an earthly counterpart. So perfection isn't necessarily coming into that view, other than the recognition that what is going on in heaven is reflected on earth, right? And the second worldview is a spiritualist worldview. And this came into being around the second century of the Common Era. And this challenged the Judeo Christian notion that creation is basically good. So I left that part out, right? So the Judeo Christian outlook was that creation is basically good. There may be some upsets, but it's basically good. In this worldview, creation was the fall. Spirit is good, matter is evil. So we see that kind of split coming in, rather than having that, what happens in heaven occurs on earth, right? And and we see that separation starting to take hold in the spiritualist worldview. That spirit is all good and matter is evil, or, I guess we just have to name it as it is. Matter was thought to be evil. And this this creates all kinds of things in the way that people are thinking. Matter is just evil. And the perfection has been sucked out of it, right? Because of the fall. And and the world is a prison into which spirits have fallen from the good heaven and trapped in bodies. And, I think you might see some resonances here in thought that comes out in different areas today. But these are things that we deal with. This is what we're swimming in. These are the ideas that are out there. And these spirits that are trapped in bodies are deformed by the ignorant powers that rule the world. And, the body, sex, and all of that are considered evil. And the task of religion was to rescue one's spirit from the flesh and reintegrate the spirit into the spiritual realm from which these souls have fallen. And these are just ways of looking at the world, right? And they do have ramifications in how we look at this idea of perfection. And even such philosophies as Neoplatonism, which we take a lot from in religious science, had some of these elements in them. And and we can see how these things continue to have an effect on the way that we live in the world. Like, for example, sexual hangups, right? Eating disorders, negative self-images, and the rejection of one's body. And we can see that happening, right? We can see that very, very strongly in this world. Still operating. The flesh is evil. The flesh is bad. And in fact, the flesh doesn't have that perfection in it. So that is operating. And then we also see it reflected in Christianity, in thinking that we escape this veil of tears and we go to heaven. Heaven is something outside, right? Somewhere else. It's a place outside of reality, right? So we have to endure this earthly realm before we get to that perfection. And then the third one that is operative today is the materialist worldview. And this became prominent during the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment, is considered the modern era, when we started to think, with Descartes, for example, who said, I think, therefore I am, right? That's the idea here. We're moving into this modern era when people are thinking more of individuality and how their subjectivity as an individual is created. So this is the materialist worldview. And it is the antithesis of the world rejection of spiritualism. So we still see this kind of being enacted now, right? And I think we can probably look at it in terms of the attack on knowledge that's occurring right now. And it's blanketed, right? It's not very nuanced when we have our institutions, our institutions that are charged with knowledge production, for example, universities, being under attack because of their worldview, right? And, they deal with, most universities deal with the material. There are philosophy and there are religion departments and all of that. However, it's grounded in, what is this material world? It studies the material world in depth. And, what we know through science is right there in that material world. Now, this is changing, of course, with the advent of well, let me back up a little bit. So this philosophical materialism, it sees the world, or the universe creation, whatever this is, however you want to define it, as devoid of spirit. So that would be a hard take, devoid of spirit. And a soft materialism is associated with consumerism, self gratification, and an absence of spiritual values. So, what this results in is that we since there's no intrinsic meaning to the universe, human beings have to create values, purposes, and meanings themselves. And these are kind of extremes, right, that we're looking at. There's no right and wrong except what society agrees upon for purposes of survival or tranquility. And we're in this, we have all of these things operative in the world right now. Those three worldviews are there. And we're navigating through that to find the truth. And this is what I love about religious science, or science of mind, is that that exploration that doesn't forget the spiritual dimension of life. And if we look at different experiments, social experiments that have occurred over the years, and let's say we look at communism as it was practiced in various places, there was a complete rejection of the spiritual side of life, and that resulted in people losing out a lot. Right, things went underground. Oftentimes, or were just completely absent from people's lives. And we know that that experiment was largely a failure. I mean, I don't think we can look at any place and find something that would be considered a pure communism in the world today. If we look at how that has been manifested, there's a recognition that there are other elements that are going into our reality. So I hope this is clear. We have those three different worldviews that are operative today. And that's what we're dealing with when we're looking at perfection. And I think that, we do have, just individuals who have as their baseline that everything is good. That basically the universe is good. Einstein would be one of those, one of our preeminent thinkers, scientific thinkers of the 20th century. He thought that the universe was good, right? That it was a good system, that it wasn't against us. It wasn't conspiring to destroy us, but that it was basically good. So we see that ancient wisdom coming up. And then we also see people who have, a more difficult, well, I'm putting a value on here. They have the idea that everything, people have fallen. They are not capable of change. We can go on and on with this worldview that believes that basically human beings are not good. Well, the fall. So we're looking at the fall. So being in this earthly realm, we've fallen and we are not good. And there is no way that we can be good without some sort of redemption by an outside force. And that can even take place with people who are Christians, right? Who believe that there's only one way of being saved, or it can even be acted out with people who believe that there are aliens who are going to come and save the earth, or a place out there will be a place of perfection and harmony, right? So we have all of these views operating within us right now. And yet, Ernest Holmes is bringing us back to this idea of perfection, which is an ancient idea, right? It's good. The universe is good. Our lives are good. Human beings are good. That perfection permeates all of creation. And I think some people may be more inclined to have that as their baseline belief for whatever reason. They may be wired that way more than others, or they may have had experiences that reinforce that. And we have, on the other hand, a more extreme view that everything is bad. And then we have people who are all in the middle. And I think probably there are many, many people who are in the middle of that, right? And navigating this sea of, well, I can't see the perfection in this right now. And this is where we have to do our own spiritual work in order to come to that perfection. And that perfection for us, we really look at healing as practitioners of science of mind. That's what we talk about. We talk about healing of the body, healing of the mind, and that healing goes also into the entire planet, right? We talk about that healing. And I also believe absolutely that if we heal ourselves, we heal our societies, we heal our planet, that has ramifications that go far beyond just this one little dot in the universe, right? That we are a beacon that is sending out those vibrations of goodness and demonstrating the perfection of God. So when we do this healing, this idea of perfection, that's an ancient idea that everything is good, right? Basically, that's the seed right there. Everything is good. All other things that come up are just permutations from our thinking that has gone off course. And we can call that ignorance, as Ernest Holmes does. And oftentimes that's what it is. It's just ignorance because we don't know. We don't know any better. And what we are doing, we are working on our mind, our thoughts, in order to arrive at that place of belief in the perfection of creation. And we know that there's no limitation there. There's nothing that is incurable. And I think this is all part of, understanding that, yes, that goodness exists, this perfection exists. And if we focus on that, we can call it forth into our reality. And I want to go to, I'll just read something from page 216. And I think that this is very important as we look at healing of the body. And Ernest Holmes says the materia medica is using the term incurable less and less frequently. For most disease in the field of medicine is being cured. Let us then free ourselves from the assumption that any disturbed state of thought need be permanent, incurable. And if you've been to the doctor and you've had a serious illness, or maybe an incurable illness, in quotes, you've been told either, this is incurable and, you will have to be in treatment for the rest of your life and, things like that. And yet we see over and over again those diseases being overcome either by what we call miracles, through spiritual means or through medicine, right? Different medicines that are being developed that can interact with those disturbed states of being in our lives. So, we know that there is something that is taking place here. And also, we know that there is a tendency in the world to kind of take ownership of something that is a disease in us. How many times have you heard people say, my this, my that, whatever it might be, my cancer, my diabetes, my high blood pressure, whatever, kind of taking ownership of that as if it is a part of your identity rather than only a condition. So, Ernest Holmes says that these things don't belong to us and they can't. Let me just read it on 217. These conditions don't belong to us and that it cannot operate through or around us. And that's a strong statement, right? It is neither cause, medium, nor effect. It is neither imagination, idea, nor reflection. It is neither visible nor invisible. It cannot emanate from God and does not emanate from humanity, humans, the human. The devil is a myth, and heaven is lost merely for the lack of an idea of harmony. So, see how these worldviews come into play, right? That are operative in our lives. And he is taking these worldviews on in this single statement. Doesn't emanate from God. And we know that imagination is one of those God powers, right, that we have. We have the gift of imagination. Idea, those ideas are God given, nor reflection. If we go back to the good, right, the good. And there aren't two powers. No devil exists. It's a myth. It's a projection of those things that are frightening to us, or sometimes our shadow, right? It's a projection of that. But it doesn't exist as a reality. It is, in his terms, mythic, right? Or unreal. So it's a way that we have developed to, for all kinds of reasons. And we have the opportunity to come back to this truth that goodness indeed exists in me and in the universe. And this is what we always have to keep in mind, right? As practitioners of religious science, we think of them as a perfect entity living in a perfect universe, surrounded by perfect situations and governed by perfect law. And in this way, we are for everyone. This doesn't mean that we are not in the constant process of perfecting those conditions that are around us. This is a reflection of the idea that all is good, that there's nothing that can really take down these things that are created, because they have been created from this place of perfection. So they will stand. Those things that are real, meaning perfect, will stand the tests of time, stand the tests of all the historical happenings of, this thing that we call time. And, we're cautioned as practitioners to make sure that our thoughts are clear. So we do go in prayer a lot as practitioners when there's something that we're confronted with that seems insurmountable. We go into prayer. We look at that, and we go back to this idea of the perfection of the universe, the perfection of God. And of course, any kind of name we put to whatever this is, this huge thing that we call God, it's limited. We only have a limited view of this, and this is where our faith comes uh, into play. We have faith, even though we don't see it. We have faith that it's there, and we know it's there, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be anything. There couldn't be any of the things that we see around us. And I think if we, I think that that's probably our work, our definite work is to always come back to that as a mantra. And I would say that has to be our mantra as practitioners, that there is a perfect God, perfect human, perfect being. That's the reality. And for me, I get this idea of perfection daily. I go out and I enjoy walking, and walking through the trees and seeing all kinds of wonderful creatures and plants, and the interactions of all these things that are taking place that I can see with my eyes and feel with my senses, in the material world. And I know that there's something that is going on that is invisible to me, that's operating in a wonderful way. And we're discovering all these wonderful things over and over again. We're discovering them, and there's more, right? There are things that are invisible. And as we move into this era of quantum physics, we're moving from this material age, right, where everything is just with what we can see, hear, and feel, to something that is much more grand, right? Goes beyond that. All these subatomic particles that are doing all kinds of incredible things. And this is still in the material world. However, this is all a part of this grand scheme of creation. So we're getting different ideas that are coming in, and we see them. We see the harmony in that. We see uh, the propagation of life going on through all of these processes that are occurring in creation. And we're also getting through science that creation is not a singular event, that creation is something that happens over and over again. In fact, there may be, and there's much evidence that there are many creations that take place. And, there's a lot of different ways that this has been imagined and outlined through mathematics of how creation takes place. And, it can happen over and over again. That's what is being suggested by our new science. Creation is not a singular event, it's happening. It's happening over and over. It's happening now. What we know right now is creation. Another universe, another world can be created as well. So all of these things, all of these worldviews have their strengths, have their truths in them. And it is our job to kind of thread the needle here and look at the perfection that exists in the universe. So I love this. This is a biblical verse that Holmes uses. Consequently, our outlook on life must be transformed by the renewing of the mind. And isn't that wonderful? That's exactly what has to happen. Our outlook on life must be transformed by the renewing of mind. And even when the results are not immediately forthcoming, we must still maintain a calm serenity of thought. We must relight the torch of our imagination by fire caught from heaven. So that's the divine idea, that fire caught from heaven. What a beautiful image, right? That is available to us. That perfection that, we put up here, right? We know there's no top or bottom or any of that, right? It just is. But it's a way that we understand things in a spatial way because we're in these bodies. And we maintain the stillness of mind and calm serenity of thought. And just think about that one idea of calm serenity of thought. That is a healing property right there. That calm serenity of thought, when everything can flow freely throughout us, and that perfection shines through us through that calm serenity of thought. And I think that we have challenges every day to our thinking, right? We have doubts. And that's why we do our spiritual practice. We go to spiritual mind treatment to arrive back at that calm serenity of thought, to know the perfection of God. What Ernest Holmes also tells us is don't try to go beyond your understanding. And this is on page 219. Since our spiritual understanding is not sufficient to enable us to mentally set bones, we call in a surgeon. Since we cannot walk on the water, we take a boat. We can only go as far as our spiritual knowledge takes us. Principle is infinite, but we shall demonstrate its power only at the level of our concept of it. Every day we have the announcement from scientists that they have made new discoveries, laws which have always existed, but which have not as yet been utilized. So here we are, he's combining the science and spirituality here. Science as a truth-seeking discipline, and those intersections that we see with spirit and science. And when we don't, when we can't go beyond our understanding, we have the ability to take the medicine, take the pill, whatever treatment is necessary to help our bodies heal. We are not prohibitive. We don't believe that, you can only do spiritual healing. We believe that they all work together, that they are all emanating from God, and we are in process. We are in process of discovering that perfection. And whatever will help soothe us, right? It can help us recognize that I amness, that we are, right? I am that which I am, which is God, right? And one of the prohibitions that I think is really good and bears some thought. And I want to say prohibition. I don't like to use such a harsh word, but Ernest Holmes says, "Do not allow yourself to become superstitious." And we can get these superstitions that reinforce doubt, right? Or we can set those aside and always move toward the truth. And moving toward the truth, moving those scales from our eyes, and not falling into superstition, then we are on the right track. And for us, we know that we are not. You don't come to a practitioner because the practitioner can heal you. You have the power in yourself to heal yourself. The practitioner is only there as that helper who helps to reveal the truth in you. And it's through this interaction, knowing that we are not separate. We are one. And when something comes up, we help one another. We are in relationship. And through those relationships, we are able to move through any of these situations that are challenging to us. So we don't do the healing as practitioners. We are only there to help reveal the truth. The person that we are treating is the one who comes to that realization in themselves, and we're holding that realization for them. So it's so important for us to maintain that calm awareness of the perfection of God in all cases. Nothing is incurable. We don't even entertain that thought. And we allow everyone to have their own healing journey, whatever that looks like for them. So we're allowing this process to take place and calling in that inner resource, that God stuff that already exists within us and all around us. Oh my goodness. We can talk about this chapter forever, right? This physical perfection. And I just want to make one last point here. There's all kinds of beliefs that we have in our lives, and it's getting rid of those false beliefs. And I think those false beliefs, could fall under the category of superstition. They're false beliefs, but they're also superstitious. And we superstition kind of seems to fall into the category often of folk medicine and that kind of stuff. However, there's just things that we think that are just unhelpful and damaging to us, and those are false beliefs. And throughout this chapter, Ernest Holmes gives examples of different things that you can treat. And it's really, he gives different kinds of things that you can do for all kinds of maladies, for arms and hands, feet and legs, for tumors, for removing complexes, things that are really all over the place, can be treated by spiritual mind treatment. So we are that physical perfection that is created by God, no matter what it looks like right now, right? No matter what it might look like, we are that physical perfection. And I think that's the main thing that we must take forward in this teaching is that physical perfection, the perfection of God, and the perfection of our being. So I'm hoping that everyone takes time to think about just having that as your mantra throughout life, knowing that good is all around us, that we are good, we are perfect, we live in a world of constant change that requires us to skillfully maneuver through it. And we can with tools like spiritual mind treatment. So, everyone, it's so wonderful to have you here. And I'm going to encourage you to support this network so that this wonderful network can continue to bring you all kinds of things to strengthen your spiritual practices, to think about these teachings, to think about where we're going in the 21st century with spirituality. What even things like what does freedom look like at this point in the 21st century? So everyone have a wonderful week, and we invite you back to the next series next Saturday.